Welcome to Bluefish Radio. I'm your host, Lawrence Gunther. Bluefish Radio is a show about the future of fish and fishing in Canada, so you will have the skills you need to become a steward of your favorite fishing hole. Welcome back to Bluefish Radio. This is a video version. It was going to be video and the audio because our guests are going to be sharing some really cool information on screen. So if you want to see all that, go to the YouTube channel, the Bluefish Canada YouTube channel, and watch the podcast there. Otherwise, I've instructed my guests to describe what they're sharing on the screen. So if you're driving in your car or walking or hiking or whatever you're doing, you won't be left out, and I won't be left out either. So today we're talking about how fish apps are being used to track invasive species, the movement of invasive species. And we have a doctoral candidate from Ball State University, Jessica Weir, who has been doing this research, and she just released a paper recently. So we're going to hear from Jessica Weir about how she's used this data from FishBrain app to track the spread of invasive species around the United States. And we've also got Nate Roman. He's the partnership manager for FishBrain. He's joining us as well, and he's going to talk to us about privacy and security and how FishBrain is being involved with this type of research. So, hey, you guys, welcome to Bluefish Radio.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. Really excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You know, I know Paul Venturelli, and he is sort of an authority in all of this stuff, and he's written a ton of papers about apps and fishing. And Paul suggested I talk to you, Jessica, and get it straight from the researcher herself. Always happy to have the person who did the research. I think that's actually where it belongs when we're talking about actual research. So why don't you start and tell us about, how you got involved with this?
Yeah, so there was already a concept, an idea of this project floating around. And, Paul had kind of come up with it with some of his collaborators. And he put out an ad for a graduate research position at Ball State, which I found and applied for. And really, it was the project that drew me in. It was kind of fascinating. I saw the idea of big data being used for fisheries, and I just jumped on it because I know that's kind of the future of our work.
So how was the FishBrain data used in this research and this big data, right?
Yeah, so the anglers in FishBrain, they log catches, and a lot of times location and time comes along with that. So we use that time and place to kind of figure out how anglers are moving across the US. Because that's going to give us an idea of how aquatic invasive species could be spread along those pathways. So it's really that time and place data that kind of helped us build this network of angler movement.
So just to be precise, and correct me if I'm wrong or right, Nate, on this, you don't see the actual movement of the anglers, where they're moving from place to place and stopping for coffee, popping into a motel or whatever. You just see them, they're here on this lake where they report a catch, and then 2 days later they're on another lake reporting a catch. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, the app's not tracking like movement in between places or anything like that. But when you look at large scale data sets, like Jessica was able to, she's able to see a catch logged here and then a catch log somewhere else to kind of infer some trends in anglers' movements and be able to tell when someone was fishing in one spot at one point and then fishing somewhere else just a little bit later. But it is, like anglers kind of control how much they share when they're logging a catch within FishBrain, which I think is really important. But yeah, people log catches in FishBrain and can use the app as like a personal logbook that's going to enable them to kind of keep track of their fishing trips. So from a personal standpoint, where you're most successful, where you're catching a lot of fish. You can have your personal fishing map with all the spots that you're fishing, and then you have full control of your privacy settings. So if you don't want anyone else to see those spots within the app, obviously you can keep them private and hidden just for yourself on that. But you also have a chance to add a lot of rich info to those catch logs about the gear you were using, the size of the fish, And all of that can help power some really powerful insights about your personal fishing habits. And it can also help you connect with other anglers who might be fishing the same body of waters as you. You can see what they're catching, what they're using, comment, interact with people that way. So a lot of value from logging catches within FishBrain for people. And then, you know, it also can create some meaningful data that can hopefully help improve the fisheries, which is, you know, where we start working with Jessica and with Ball State and with Paul Venturelli, and some really awesome people that way. So
for sure. Hey, just for clarification, Nate, when people get to select their level of privacy when the users on FishBrain, is it all or nothing? Can they say, I want to keep all my data private, or none of my data, all my data can be shared, or is there levels of privacy?
There are levels of privacy, and it varies completely by what you're most interested in. So some people will share catches publicly, and that would allow other people to discover their catch both within the social feed and within the map. So it's a great way to get a lot of engagement on your catches and connect with more people in your area, especially. Some people like to keep it a lot more locked down, so they won't even tell you the name of the body of water. You know, they'll be able to see it, but they won't let anyone else see the name of the body of water or their actual like fishing spot on the map. Some people kind of take a middle ground, which is what I do most often. I'm a pretty passionate steelhead angler here in Ohio, in the Great Lakes. So what I'll often do is share the name of the river I was fishing, you know, Rocky River, Chagrin River. I'll name the stream, but I won't actually let you see my catch position on the map. That's kind of for my eyes only on that side.
What about the researchers that are coming in on the back end on this data? Is it the same for them as it is for the social side in terms of the public side?
Yeah, so I mean, we work with researchers on a kind of like a case-by-case basis on that side, just to make sure that, you know, any data that we share is going to be properly anonymized, and that people's locations and privacy will be protected and not shared externally or anything like that. So Jessica probably has a lot more of the specifics for her like specific data set on that side. But yeah, always keeping on like anonymity and people's privacy at the forefront of our mind when we're working with researchers or anything like that.
So your researchers are checked out. You don't just let anyone in to the back door. They come with credentials, and they sign confidentiality agreements and so on.
Yes, definitely.
So there is confidentiality, and thanks for keep filling us in on that. I think that's on a lot of people's minds, right? Is how much of their data is being shared, who has access to their data, and you know, is there privacy and confidentiality and all that. But I think you cleared that up pretty good for us. But Jessica, let's get back to your research then. And so how do you define an invasion superhighway? I mean, this sounds pretty ominous, right?
Yeah, it does. You know, the words we used are kind of striking and exciting. So, but to explain the invasion superhighway, it's this national network that spans the United States. And it's how aquatic invasive species are spreading, or what kind of network they are spreading through. And then, of course, our research drives that data from those pathways that were heavily and frequently traveled by the anglers reporting catches in FishBrain.
And again, just by the location and the proximity between locations, and then you just are using artificial intelligence to sort of draw those highways on the map. Or are you just inferring these highways? Is that how it's working?
Yeah, so I can share some images to kind of show how it was built, this map. Yeah. So this was kind of the base of the map. This is a map of the United States, and we have all these connections between different lakes. And we took these connections and used some ArcGIS, like GIS programming, geospatial tools to kind of create a density map of those connections. And these are just straight line connections between lakes that people have made. So there's some hotspots here, usually in the middle of a city, like these metropolitan areas. And really the right side of the map, that eastern part of the United States, is very red. It's very dense with connections. And you know, that makes sense because there's a lot more water bodies in the eastern part of the United States. There's a lot more people. But you can kind of see these dense pathways that that move from east to west. And, we already know that some of these widespread invasive species moved that way. So
Wow.
it was kind of cool to see that. And as we were looking at this map, we noticed, it looks like the interstate highway system, really, because of those connections between large metropolitan areas. So we overlaid this map with the interstate system and kind of used that as our superhighways. And so this next map, it has a lot going on, but basically you can see that same kind of color density as a roadway. And I think what's interesting about this is looking at the density of Dracaena mussels, so those invasive mussels,
Right.
where those are located on the map. And, they are co-located with some of these hotspots, these invasion superhighways. And they're also, you can see some of these rivers and things drawn out through the location of those invasive species. But that was kind of how we built this invasion superhighway.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Jessica, I mean, I think we've been hearing for years about, invasive Asian carp coming up the Mississippi River, getting into the Lake Michigan. And we've become accustomed to this idea that invasive species either are moving through rivers or by container ships into the Great Lakes, up the St. Lawrence River, through ballast water, and then being dumped into the Great Lakes. This is sort of been the mantra for over a decade, right? Almost, many, many years we've been hearing about, cargo ships and the Mississippi River. So to reframe our minds to thinking about, that there's people involved, and it's not just rivers, it's not just ships, it's us now.
Yeah, we are what's considered the secondary spread of those invasive species. So that primary spread is done by those ballast ships, and in the first introductions, plants coming over, being shipped to the United States and bringing invasive species, situations like that. So when we think about secondary spread of invasive species, we're thinking about people fishing in the Great Lakes or boating in the Great Lakes and then moving those boats to more inland waters. And that's kind of that second piece to how the invasive species really take spread across the entire United States.
And you're seeing that with the maps as well. You're seeing them going on to secondary roads and then into sort of more rural parts of the United States.
Yeah.
Have you seen sort of directly linked to small bodies of water where invasive species are popping up? Have you seen those sort of links with the FishBrain data?
Yeah, I think what was kind of a surprising find for this study was that it was just a bunch of small movements by many, many anglers that contributed to this national network. So someone might just be driving, 50 kilometers or so to a different lake in their region, and just, adding those movements up over time is what really, helped us see this entire, span of movement across the United States. We thought that was pretty cool.
It's sort of like, just little steps. It's not necessarily big steps, because most anglers, they go somewhere and they go fishing and they come back the same day, right? So yeah, like an hour's drive, half hour's drive. I mean, not too many people want to drive 2 hours to go fishing and then 2 hours to come home again in one day. So these 50 kilometer, 1.5 hour trips makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think over 50% of our movements that we captured in the data were less than 50 kilometers. So
wow,
that's a big part of it.
So how did the study start? You talked a little bit about that, but what were your first few steps? And then how long did it take before you saw these sort of maps sort of, setting up these superhighways taking shape?
Well, it was a bit of a learning experience for me, working with up to 10,000 catches of data. It's not something you can do in Excel. So I had to kind of teach myself our programming language to figure out how to automate some of this stuff.
Wow.
So that took a while, but working with such big data, that was a bit of a learning curve, and I learned a lot from it. So I would say it took about a year to kind of dig into the FishBrain data and start to understand it, see where any issues were coming up and kind of reconcile those. And yeah, I would say it took about a year before the maps started producing.
Did you have to write code? Like, is there some artificial intelligence to this, or is this really simple code, or was this all manual?
No artificial intelligence. It was written code just to kind of automate things.
Yeah.
So, working with for loops and iterations and things like that helped quite a bit.
This is really like the beginning of artificial intelligence. You're showing that, if you can do it manually and write code, a bit of code, and come up with results like this, can you imagine what the kind of results we're going to generate once we start involving our artificial intelligence?
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine.
It's going to be almost predictive, I think, when they start to see new routes being taken by anglers to new parts of, access to other lakes and things. So it could almost raise some warning signs and saying, hang on, watch out, they're coming, get the wash stations ready.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the hope, is that this is a starting off point for how we can use this angler generated data, this location information to predict that kind of thing. I think that's, definitely what's coming down the pipe.
How many data sets do you think you were involved, like user data sets?
I'm sorry, can you?
So how many data sets, like how many individual users, FishBrain users, you think contributed to this?
So in this study, we had to pare down for several reasons, but we ended up with about 250,000 anglers.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was reported almost 4,000 catches.
4,000?
Yeah, or sorry, 4 million.
4 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's humongous. This is humongous data.
Yeah.
This is most researchers would run screaming when they see numbers like that. Oh, that's a headache.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, just a comment too, like Jessica was very strategic too about paring down and making sure to get the most valuable data. But, within FishBrain now, we're up to almost 15 million registered members who have logged 14 million catches or so in the app. So it's really an incredible community that's highly involved and uses it to log their catches, find fishing spots, plan fishing trips. It's really an awesome app. And if people haven't checked it out, you can actually explore some of this data within the FishBrain map too. So it's much more, not as much of a scale like for a research-based program, but you can actually check out your area a little bit and start seeing where fish are being caught near you and things like that too. So if people are interested in checking it out. Yeah, but this is basically just like how the catch logging process works within FishBrain. So, you upload a picture, you're able to add info about this fish species, and FishBrain will actually help you detect the fish species if you're not sure. We have a species recognition algorithm that can help you with that. And then you add in other information as far as, how big the fish was, did you release it? We'll automatically detect the time based on the picture you took, which is really helpful for you to know exactly when you caught that fish, what time of day, what the tide was when you're looking back at it too. We do attach that weather data for you as well. You can add gear you used if you want to, track your favorite lures and things like that. And then you also, here's where you kind of control that privacy setting when you're adding it to the map. So here I have it set to competitive, which is where I'm sharing the name of the water I was fishing, but no one else will see exactly where I was fishing but me. But you can imagine if you're exploring the map, wherever you live in the US, it'll be just completely covered in little catch pins like this of people who did chose to share their location publicly. So a really cool way to explore the data and start segmenting it by what you want to fish for. Like, oh, I only want to see striped bass catches, or I only want to see, for me, it's often like steelhead or smallmouth bass where I'm from in Ohio, but works that way all over the country. And then obviously there's some amazing research applications for that scale of data too. So yeah, I don't want to take up too much time.
No, it's good, Nate. It's good.
Definitely want to pass it back to Jessica.
Nate, I got just a follow-up question on that. So when people sort of log or using their FishBrain app and they have it with them and they're saying logging data, is it capturing the GPS coordinates at that time when they log on, or how do they really get it defined so they can sort of save a spot using the FishBrain app if they want to come back to?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. So when you log a catch, actually, and typically it's with a picture. So you took a picture on your phone, and that'll actually have the GPS coordinates stored in the picture typically. So we can detect where you were. And again, we're not sharing it without your permission, but for your sake, we can detect right where you were so you can save that exact spot. Within the map, you can also drop waypoints and things like that. So even if you don't catch a fish, but you want to save a spot, or you're scouting a river or something like that, people often like drop waypoints so they know how to come back to that spot. So you'll have a combination of your catch logs from the past in your kind of personal fishing map, and then also your waypoints, which might be connected to your catch logs, or it might be connected to just, you know, a good point or some structure that you want to come back and fish later. So varies a little bit how people build up their own map, but I would say the catch logs and the waypoints are typically how people are doing it and saving spots for themselves.
14 million catch logs reported. Is that all the catch logs, or the confidential, competitive, and public ones, or is that just public?
That's including all of them. So
Oh, okay. And do you know how many are public and how many are private, or do you have an idea?
I don't off the top of my head. You know, some people are very protective of their spots, but I think people would also be like a little surprised at how much people are willing to share when there's a good community aspect behind it as well. So, you know, when you do share the name of your spot, it also actually helps you connect with other people who are fishing there. I've met a lot of people through the FishBrain app. We see each other out on the river and just get a chance to say like, oh, I saw you post an awesome fish the other day, or things like that. So it's a cool community component when you are willing to share a little bit of info about the spot. But again, that's completely up to the individual, how much they share or don't share.
I think from what I'm hearing from people who use FishBrain and other apps is that their first thing they notice is that all their favorite spots that they thought are their own personal fishing spots are well known already, right? There's very few spots where you go fishing that other people don't already know about. So this idea of secrecy, and you know, that's just your own personal spot, and then someone else finds out somehow, you know, someone let the knowledge out, or one of your friends, you know, there's just a lot of people who go fishing and they all figure it out.
Yeah, people talk about fishing spots everywhere, whether it's in FishBrain or, you know, at the tackle shop, just, you know, hanging out with their buddies. Like, people are always talking about fishing spots. So it's very rare that you have a spot completely that you're the only one who knows about. But if that is the case, you definitely can still log catches there and protect it for yourself on that side too. I'd like to think I still have a couple of those left, but
we all do. Jessica, what do we learn from this? And, you know, I see like Ontario has now implemented rules that if you leave the body of water, you need to check your boat, you need to check your trailer, your equipment for any sort of clinging plant life or mussels or other things that could be considered invasive before you leave that body of water. You have to do a visual check, and it can be a fairly sizable fine if you drive off without doing that sort of visual check. And it makes sense, you know, you do it before you leave, because that's where the invasive species were picked up. There's no sense doing it before you launch again, but you can also go home and power wash and clean up your gear at home. But the deal is to do it before you leave. But what are you learning from all this, and what are you suggesting? Is there some rules of thumb that you'd like to suggest?
Yeah, I guess I would hope that anglers will educate themselves about the aquatic invasive species that are in their area. And of course, know their local rules. You know, if it's an issue, you're going to get fined as you leave the boat launch. But anglers can also do things like helping state and federal agencies by reporting invasive species if they see it. You know, anglers are generally very attuned to the environment they're fishing in. So, you know, they have a unique position to help in that way. You know, compared to maybe a recreational boater who's doing something for pleasure, just enjoying boating. So, you know, anglers are are already generally good stewards of the aquatic environment. So, remembering to don't dump bait in the water, don't relocate fish and aquatic organisms. Those are pretty simple things that I think most people know the rules to. But yeah, just paying attention to what kind of aquatic invasive plants are in your area, because those are some of the biggest ones that get wrapped up in your propellers, in your live wells and things like that, and can spread. So just being aware and trying to mitigate as well as you can.
Yeah. And even disease, like in the province next to me here, Quebec, they don't even allow you to use live bait, other than worms. You're not allowed to use live bait anymore because of the potential of spreading disease. And now Ontario, you're not allowed to take minnows from one region to another. The minnows you use have to be caught in that region if you're going to use them in that region. So there's a lot of recognition of it's not just invasive species, it's disease and virus as well, and the spread of that. And we all just have to become more attuned to this. This is the new reality. I mean, we're all weekend warriors now. We all go out, climb in our canoes, load up our boats, and head off to waters. We have to take responsibility for what we're doing by doing that. Otherwise, all those lake associations, man, we might start losing access to these bodies of water as these lake associations start to lobby to remove those public boat launches.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the anglers who, have that in their family background have probably seen all the changes that have happened to the waters over time. So.
Yeah, I mean, small lakes, and all of a sudden you got a noxious weed that you've never seen before taken over, and that's happening.
Yeah, and I think that awareness component is so huge because, like you said, Jessica, like most anglers really care about the lakes they're fishing. They care about conservation and the health of the fisheries. It's just making sure that the right info gets in front of them so that you can really think of your role and how you can help protect things long term. For me, I live right by Lake Erie, and it's not weird for me to go kayaking in Lake Erie one day and then a couple of days later go kayaking in an inland lake that isn't otherwise connected. So it's just about understanding that, understanding your habits, and knowing like, okay, if I'm going to do that, I need to make sure I'm doing it responsibly, and not I'm completely rinsing down my kayak, moving it around, and not opening up any potential mini highways or just through a small movement on a small scale. So yeah, I think on a small scale basis, like generally anglers tend to care a lot about conservation, and work like this that really brings awareness to the impact you can make just on a small scale and being conscious of your own movement. I think it's so valuable for all of us and just helps call attention to the work we can do as conservationists, really.
Nate, do you think FishBrain, or maybe you've done this already, you think at some point, little warnings will pop up saying, hey, look, you're fishing on a lake where there's known invasive species of this type and this type. Please check your live wells. Please check your equipment before you leave the lake, and make sure you've cleaned everything off properly before you go somewhere else. I mean, now that we have this kind of data, but I understand too, it's, the data is not, it's going to change every day. There's changes. So you can't be 100% accurate if you start issuing these types of warnings, but it'd be an interesting sort of public service announcement feature to bring into the app if that was possible.
Yeah, and it's definitely something where we want to get that kind of messaging to our anglers. Our big, what we're trying to do to get that across is actually partner with more state agencies and state fishery departments here in the US. They'll tend to be the best sources of local information about their fisheries, about any potential threats to waters and things like that. So we actually help them activate a presence within FishBrain, so a page within FishBrain. And then we take any content they share, any announcements, broad announcements about, whether it's stocking trout ponds, whether it's about invasive species or waterways that need to be protected. It's kind of up to them what they want to talk about, what they want to get the word out to about the anglers. And then we help target it to all the right people. So if they really want to, get the word out about this one specific lake, we can make sure to promote that message to everyone who fishes there or lives really near there. So starting to head in that direction for sure. We understand the importance, and more states are starting to join in that regard. We also now this year launched a regulations feature in the app. So when you're exploring the map. You can always check regulations near you. It's not live in every state yet, but I think it's in 27 now. You can check out and see fishing regulations, and there's also great opportunity to use that for specific lakes that have potential risks or anything like that to display a warning message or something like that. So
That's
we're
a great
definitely
idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. I know that there was a fishing club. I won't mention the name of the tournament fishing organization in the States, but you know, they went to a different state, and some of the anglers didn't realize there was limits on the number of lines they were allowed to fish with, and we're fishing with 2 lines, and were then disqualified because it was 1 line per angler state. And they said, well, no one told us, but you know, who's responsible for telling who, and so forth. So that was quite a, you know, there was a lot of discussion about that, but we're all supposed to be aware of the rules. But you know, having access to those rules in real time, and situational rules, even in terms of harvesting regulations and closures, and maybe sanctuaries and things like that, this is going to be all really important. And we're going to see more of these sanctuaries popping up on lakes. We're introducing that into a zone here in Ontario, where there's going to be lakes that have sanctuaries for certain periods of time, where there's going to be no fishing allowed for certain periods of time during the spawn season, just to make sure the fish have a chance to complete the spawn successfully. And so having apps that can alert us to this knowledge in real time is going to be really useful. And so keep up that work, you guys, for sure. Jessica, what's in store for you? What are you working on next, now that you've tackled this giant problem? What are you going to do next? The rest of the world, or Canada maybe?
Actually, we have a grant that kind of focuses on a certain region of the U.S. So it's the upper Mississippi River Basin. You know, a lot of fishing opportunities up there. We're talking about Minnesota and Wisconsin and all those lakes. So it's kind of the idea is to pare down and focus in on some of these more local scales, and also try and maybe get an idea of what kind of anglers to target for educational campaigns. So we think that maybe FishBrain data can help us, you know, figure that out. But,
wow, like more demographic kind of information in terms of age and so forth.
well, we don't have any age or demographic information through FishBrain, so we're kind of inferring some things based on where people are fishing. You know, are they weekend warriors, or are they fishing every day? Those kind of things.
Yeah, traveling more tournament anglers, traveling all across the state, across the different states and so forth.
Yeah.
Maybe you could identify the ambassadors too, then, that could become sort of spokespeople for this type of thing, you know, the ones that are doing more traveling. Incentivize them. Yeah.
There's definitely a whole nother side of FishBrain where that's that social aspect. So you have the maybe more influencer type people on the app, and you know, I think that could be a whole study in itself, just looking at the social aspects of fishing through that app.
Identifying the people that have good followings, and giving them the tools to get that information out in a little info sessions that they can share, pass on. What do you think, Nate?
I think it sounds like a great idea. We do have a lot of you know, people can follow other people in the app for sure. And even in the areas you mentioned, like Minnesota, like I can already think off the top of my head of a few people who have pretty big followings fishing the lakes in Minnesota. They, you know, we know them pretty well from the FishBrain team. And I think it'd be great to put you guys in touch and see if we can get anything rolling there. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's some potential.
Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to speak with me about this today, and looking forward to getting this out into the public domain. And Jessica, when did your paper come out, and where can people find your paper? Is there a link that you could share with us?
Yeah, it came out earlier this year, published in a journal called PNAS Nexus. So the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences Nexus Journal.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say feel free to check out the FishBrain app. It's available. It's free to install on both Apple, so on iPhone, or on Android. You can find it in the Google Play Store or the App Store just by searching FishBrain. Really cool community. And yeah, I would definitely encourage people to go check it out, check out the maps, start interacting with anglers near them, and you know, start using FishBrain if it sounds like something that might be interesting to you.
Thank you again, you guys. Thanks for listening to Bluefish Radio. I hope you found the show both entertaining and informative. Bluefish Radio is made possible with the generous assistance from the following supporters. For more information on Bluefish Radio and for more information about myself, visit lawrencegunther.com. Thanks for listening.